Hello, friends. Welcome back to Empires of Antiquity. I hope all is well with you. Today we're diving into a story, one that echoes through time, a story of power, betrayal, and one of the deadliest forms of rivalry, sibling rivalry. You know, most of us have experienced sibling rivalries growing up. Who gets the biggest slice of cake? Who gets the best seat in the car? The endless bickering over toys. But in some cases, it's not just about toys or desserts. It's about thrones, empires, and survival. In the ancient world, sibling rivalry sometimes took a darker turn, a much darker turn. And when it did, it had a name. Sororicide, the act of one sister killing another. And few sibling rivalries were as intense or as deadly as the one between Cleopatra and her younger sister, Arsinoe IV. Cleopatra, the eldest of the Ptolemaic sisters, was born in 69 BCE. Arsinoe, her younger sister, came along several years later, around 63 or 62 BCE. 7 years apart, but the gap didn't make their rivalry any less fierce. By the time Arsinoe was still in her teens, Cleopatra was already locked in a battle for the throne. Power had a way of speeding things up in Egypt, and it wasn't long before Arsinoe made her own play for the crown. But power comes at a price. Hers was death, which brings us to ancient Egypt, a land of immense power, wealth, and intrigue. The year is 48 BCE. Cleopatra, now a queen in her prime, holds the throne, but not without opposition. While Cleopatra charmed the likes of Julius Caesar, her younger sister Arsinoe watched from the shadows, calculating, waiting. She was no mere sibling content with playing a minor role, no. Arsinoe had plans of her own, ambitious, hungry for power, and ready to do whatever it took. They say blood is thicker than water, but in the Ptolemaic dynasty, bloodshed was just a way of life. It wasn't enough to simply rule. No, not in Egypt. You had to fight for it. And when you did, it didn't matter if you had to kill your own brother or even your own sister to get there. Cleopatra and Arsinoe were locked in a silent war from the start, each one with a claim to the Egyptian throne. And in a world where power meant everything, there could be only one winner. When Cleopatra allied herself with Julius Caesar, Arsinoe knew her time was running out. She couldn't charm her way into Caesar's favor like her sister. So what did she do? She fled the palace, gathering an army of her own, declaring herself queen and preparing for war. Picture this. A young Arsinoe, just 16 or 17 years old, standing on the battlefield commanding Egyptian forces against Caesar's Roman legions. And for a brief moment, she nearly had the upper hand. She was that close to winning, to reclaiming the throne from Cleopatra, and proving that this forgotten sister could be more than just a footnote in history. But, as with many things in history, it didn't last. The tide turned in Cleopatra's favor. With Caesar's help, Cleopatra retook the palace. Arsinoe betrayed, captured, and humiliated. And then, in the most bitter twist of fate, she was paraded through the streets of Rome as a prize of war. Can you imagine? The blood of the Ptolemies, royalty herself, paraded like a common prisoner. And yet, that wasn't the end of her story. You see, Arsinoe wasn't executed after Caesar's triumph. Instead, she was sent away, exiled to the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, a place of sanctuary. For a while, it seemed she might live in peace. But peace was a luxury her sister couldn't afford. As long as Arsinoe lived, she was a threat. Cleopatra knew that. And when the time came, Cleopatra did what she always did, eliminated the threat. Cleopatra convinced her lover, Mark Antony, to send assassins. Right there on the steps of the temple, they found Arsinoe. Sororicide, the ultimate betrayal. But again, power comes at an ultimate price. And for Arsinoe, that price was death. In the end, Cleopatra won the throne. History remembers her as the last great ruler of Egypt. But Arsinoe, well, her story is often forgotten. A footnote, perhaps. But in the game of power, even the footnotes are written in blood. What could drive a sister to kill her own blood? Ambition, fear, maybe just survival. Whatever the reason, Arsinoe's death was a reminder that in ancient Egypt, even family wasn't safe from betrayal. Stay tuned for more stories of power, betrayal, and empires that rose and fell in the blink of an eye. Until next time, friends, stay curious. This has been Empires of Antiquity.